What if Rick Sanchez stumbled into World of Warcraft? Picture this: the multiverse's most brilliant mind, portal gun in hand, crashing into a realm where magic flows like rivers and ancient gods whisper from the shadows. A dimension where death is temporary, where warriors respawn at graveyards, and where the very fabric of reality bends to game mechanics he's never encountered. The Alliance would see him as a threat, the Horde as a potential weapon, and the old gods? They would recognize a mind ripe for corruption. In a world built on endless conflict between cosmic forces, can even Rick's genius survive when he realizes he's not in a universe anymore, but inside a game he can't log out of? The portal tears reality apart above the Elwyn forest, spitting green lightning across the pastoral landscape like a wound in the sky itself. Birds scatter from ancient oaks as the dimensional breach widens, crackling with technology that has no business existing in a world governed by arcane laws. Through the swirling vortex stumbles an old man, lab coat stained with interdimensional residue, white hair wild and unkempt. He hits the grass hard, portal gun sparking and dying in his grip, a flask of whiskey somehow still clutched in his other hand. "Ah, geez, that's just perfect," Rick Sanchez mutters, wiping drool from his chin as he examines his malfunctioning device. The portal gun's display flickers with corrupted data, dimensional coordinates scrambled into gibberish. Whatever just happened, it wasn't a standard malfunction. Something pulled him here, yanked him out of his intended trajectory like a fish on a hook. Rick staggers to his feet, squinting at the impossibly vibrant world around him. The colors are too saturated, the lighting too perfect, like everything's been touched up by an overeager art director. Massive trees tower overhead, their leaves rustling in a breeze that smells of fresh grass, and something else. Something underneath that his scientific mind immediately flags as wrong. "Great, landed in some kind of Renaissance fair dimension," Rick grumbles, taking a swig from his flask. The whiskey burns on the way down, grounding him in familiar sensations, while his brain processes the wrongness of this place. The physics here feel off, like the fundamental constants have been adjusted for aesthetic appeal rather than logical consistency. Gravity's slightly weaker, light bends at angles that shouldn't work. And there's an energy permeating everything that reads like magic but structured like computer code. A wolf appears from the tree line, but it's not like any wolf Rick has ever seen across countless dimensions. This creature is massive, easily the size of a horse, with fur that gleams too perfectly and eyes that glow with faint amber light. It spots Rick and immediately charges, moving with predatory intent that's somehow both realistic and theatrical at the same time. Rick doesn't even flinch. He pulls a small device from his lab coat, points it at the charging beast, and presses a button. The wolf freezes mid-leap, suspended in the air as temporal stasis locks it in place. "Yeah, that's what I thought," Rick says, walking past the frozen predator to examine it more closely. The creature's jaw is locked open, saliva crystallized in mid-flight, muscles tensed for a kill it will never complete. Rick taps the wolf's nose, and the temporal field dissipates. The beast crashes to the ground, immediately scrambling away in confusion before disappearing back into the forest. "Interesting," Rick mutters, pulling out a scanning device that looks like it was assembled from spare parts and duct tape. The readings make him pause, then check the device, then scan again. "No way. This can't be right." According to his scanner, the wolf wasn't actually a wolf. It was more like a projection, a three-dimensional rendering of the concept of wolf given temporary physical form. And now that Rick's looking closer, everything around him has that same quality. The trees, the grass, the distant mountains, they're all too perfect, too deliberately crafted. The sound of armored footsteps makes Rick turn. A group of human soldiers is approaching, clad in blue and gold plate armor that would be impossibly heavy in any universe with normal physics. Their tabards bear a lion symbol, and they move in formation with military precision. Leading them is a knight whose armor practically glows with holy light, a massive sword strapped to his back that radiates energy Rick's scanner identifies as divine in nature. "Halt, stranger," the knight commands, his voice resonating with authority that feels magically enhanced. "You stand in territory claimed by the Kingdom of Stormwind, under protection of the Alliance. State your business in Elwyn Forest, and explain the nature of that device you carry." Rick looks at the portal gun, still sparking and useless in his hand, then back at the knights. "Oh, this? This is just a walking stick. For my hip. Got a bad hip. Very old. Much weakness." He adopts an exaggerated elderly posture, hunching over the portal gun like it's a cane. The knight's eyes narrow. "That device crackles with energies unknown to our mages. Are you a warlock? Have you been trafficking with demons?" His hand moves to his sword hilt, and the soldiers behind him ready their weapons. Rick notices something else strange. Their movements are synchronized. Too perfect, like they're following programming rather than individual thought. "Warlock? Demons? Oh man, you guys really commit to the bit, don't you?" Rick straightens up, abandoning his old man act. "Look, I'm just passing through your little medieval cosplay situation here. Point me to your nearest power source. Something with at least a gigawatt output, and I'll be out of your historically inaccurate hair in no time." The knight draws his sword in one fluid motion, and the blade ignites with golden flames. "You speak in riddles, and show no respect for the light. I sense darkness in you, traveler. You will come with us to Stormwind for questioning, or you will face the judgment of a paladin of the Silver Hand." Rick sighs, recognizing the pattern. Another dimension. Another group of self-righteous warriors who think they're the good guys. But there's something else here. Something his scanner is picking up that makes him pause. The knight's sword isn't just enchanted. It's tapping into something vast, an enormous reservoir of energy that exists somewhere beyond normal space. And the knight himself, his mind is there, fully present and aware. But it's constrained somehow, locked into behavioral patterns. "Tell you what, Sir Glows-a-Lot," Rick says, pulling another device from his coat. "How about we skip the part where you try to arrest me? I humiliate you in front of your soldiers, and we jump straight to the part where you take me to whoever's actually in charge around here." The paladin charges, sword raised for a devastating overhead strike. Rick presses a button, and a barrier of crackling energy erupts between them. The sword impacts the shield with a flash of light and electricity, and the paladin is thrown backward, landing hard on the grass. His soldiers immediately rush forward, but Rick has already adjusted his shield's frequency. Their weapons bounce off the barrier like they're hitting solid diamond. "See, this is the problem with religious fanatics," Rick says, backing away toward the forest. "You guys never stop to think, hey, maybe this random old guy has technology that could paste me across the landscape. You just charge in with your glowing swords and your self-righteous attitudes." The paladin struggles to his feet, his armor scorched where it contacted Rick's shield. There's something new in his eyes now. Not fear exactly, but a recognition that he's encountered something outside his understanding. "What manner of sorcery is this? No warlock commands such power without demonic pacts." "It's called science, you medieval nightmare," Rick snaps, his patience wearing thin. "Technology, applied physics. The systematic study of the natural world. You know, the thing your dimension apparently skipped in favor of. What? Praying to the light and hoping really hard? Before the paladin can respond, a portal of swirling purple energy erupts in the clearing. This one's different from Rick's portals, more organic, less controlled. Through it steps a figure in elaborate robes, staff in hand, with glowing arcane runes orbiting their head like a crown of mathematical formulas. The mage, and Rick knows immediately that's what this is, surveys the scene with barely concealed amusement. "Stand down, Grayson," the mage says to the paladin. "This one's not your typical warlock." She turns to Rick, and he notices her eyes are literally glowing with magical energy. "I felt your arrival from Stormwind. That portal you tore through reality set off every alarm in the Mage Quarter. I'm Archmage Kalia, and you, stranger, are coming with me whether you like it or not." Rick laughs, the sound bitter and sharp. "Oh, another wizard. Great. Let me guess. You're gonna threaten me with fireballs and lightning bolts. Really sell that whole mysterious magic user vibe you've got going." Kalia doesn't threaten. She just waves her staff, and Rick's shield dissipates like it never existed. Before he can react, he's lifted into the air by invisible force, arms pinned to his sides, portal gun floating just out of reach. The mage walks closer, studying him with eyes that see more than the physical. "You're not from Azeroth. You're not even from the great dark beyond. You're something else entirely, something that shouldn't exist here." Rick struggles against the telekinetic grip, his mind racing through options. He could activate the emergency EMP in his coat pocket, but that would fry the portal gun completely. He could try verbal negotiation, but this mage seems too intelligent for simple manipulation. Or he could do something completely unpredictable. "You're right," Rick says, forcing a grin. "I'm not from around here. I'm from a place where magic is just science people are too lazy to understand, where gods are just powerful beings who got really good PR, and where dimensional travel is something I do before breakfast." He meets her glowing eyes with his own bloodshot ones. "Now you can either kill me, which would be a waste, or you can take me to your leader, your king, your Archmage Supreme, or whatever, and maybe, just maybe, we can figure out why your little fantasy world reached across the multiverse and yanked me here like a cosmic fishing lure." The Archmage's expression shifts, intrigue replacing suspicion. "You think Azeroth summoned you? Deliberately?" "Think about it," Rick presses, sensing an opening. "Portal guns don't just malfunction. Mine's been through everything. Time loops, reality storms, interdimensional customs enforcement. But something here, some force or entity or whatever, it grabbed my signal and pulled me in. Which means somebody in this dimension either wants me here or needs me here. And I don't know about you, but I'd really like to know which one it is before I fix my gun and get the hell out." Kalia studies him for a long moment, magical energy swirling around her in complex patterns that Rick's scientific mind immediately starts analyzing. Finally, she lowers her staff, and Rick drops to the ground. "You're either the greatest liar I've ever encountered, or you're telling a truth that could change everything we understand about the cosmos. Either way, the Council of Six will want to speak with you." Rick retrieves his portal gun, checking it for damage while internally celebrating his successful manipulation. "The Council of Six? Let me guess. 6 powerful wizards who think they run everything." "The 6 most powerful mages in the Eastern Kingdoms," Kalia corrects. "And yes, we essentially do run Stormwind's magical defenses. If something pulled you here through the Twisting Nether, we need to know about it." She begins tracing symbols in the air, preparing another teleportation spell. "Wait, the Twisting Nether?" Rick interrupts. "What the hell is that?" Kalia pauses, surprised. The space between worlds, the realm of demons and chaotic energies. All portals pass through it, even yours, apparently. Rick's expression darkens as pieces start clicking together. Bullshit. My portals fold space-time directly. No intermediate dimension required. But if you're telling me there's some kind of hell dimension that intersects with normal space here, and my portal got routed through it, he trails off, scanning his portal gun more carefully. There, in the quantum field generator, minute traces of energy that match nothing in his database. Energy that feels malevolent, hungry, aware. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, Rick mutters. Your hell dimension contaminated my portal gun. That's why it crashed. That's why I can't just jump out. He rounds on Kalia. How does anything travel in this dimension without getting corrupted by this twisting nether? Carefully, Kalia says simply. With wards and protective spells. With the guidance of the light, or the careful manipulation of arcane barriers. Why do you think mage portals glow purple? That's arcane energy preventing demonic contamination. Rick runs a hand through his wild hair. Stress and alcohol and interdimensional physics combining into a migraine. Okay. This is fixable. I just need to purge the demonic energy from my gun's systems, recalibrate the dimensional frequency to avoid your hell dimension, and punch through whatever cosmic walls are keeping this place isolated from the normal multiverse. He looks at Kalia. I'm gonna need a lot of stuff. Magical energy sources, preferably non-demonic. Access to your most advanced arcane technology, and something strong to drink that isn't made from medieval fermentation techniques. Kalia's lips twitch into a slight smile. Come to Stormwind. If you're genuine, we'll help you. If you're a threat, we have ways of dealing with those too. The teleportation spell engulfs them both, and Rick's stomach lurches as reality bends in ways his portal gun never makes it bend. When the purple light fades, they're standing in a city that makes Rick's cynical heart sink even further. Stormwind is massive, a sprawling metropolis of stone and magic that defies every principle of medieval engineering he knows. Towers reach toward the sky at heights that should be impossible without steel reinforcements. Districts spread out in planned precision that suggests either magical construction or game design. And everywhere, people and creatures of dozens of species move with that same too perfect quality he noticed in the forest. This isn't a city, Rick says slowly, his scanner working overtime. This is a construct. A massive, elaborate, persistent construct. He looks at Kalia with new understanding. You're not real. None of this is real. Not in the traditional sense, anyway. The Archmage's expression hardens. Careful what you say next, stranger. Reality is subjective enough without outsiders claiming we don't exist. Rick shakes his head. No, you exist. You're conscious, aware, real in all the ways that matter. But this world, it's not naturally occurring. It's designed. Crafted. There are rules here that don't exist anywhere else in the multiverse. He gestures wildly around them. The respawning wolves, the perfect architecture, the way magic works like it's reading from a handbook. You're all living inside something, and I don't think you even realize it. Before Kalia can respond, a commotion erupts from one of the city's towers. A massive beam of shadow energy lances into the sky, followed by screams and the clash of weapons. Guards rush past them toward the disturbance, shouting about void corruption and old god influence. What now? Rick asks, watching the chaos unfold. Kalia's face pales. The stockades. Something's broken out. She grabs Rick's arm, and suddenly they're teleporting again, appearing in a cathedral district where priests and paladins are forming defensive lines. At the center of the chaos, Rick sees something that makes even his jaded consciousness recoil. It's a mass of writhing tentacles and impossible geometry, a creature that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space, trying to force itself into reality. Where it touches stone, the material corrupts, turning black and oily. Where it touches people, they scream and clutch their heads, blood pouring from their eyes and ears. And at the center of this nightmare, Rick sees eyes, thousands of them, all focused on one thing: him. Well, Rick says, his voice tight with the particular brand of anger that comes from being cosmically screwed over. I think I just figured out what summoned me here. The creature speaks, and its voice bypasses ears entirely, drilling directly into minds with words that taste like madness. Rick Sanchez, the mind that walks between infinities. You have been called to serve the true masters of Azeroth. You have been called to serve Ny'alotha. Rick raises his portal gun, knowing it won't fire, but pointing it anyway out of pure spite. Yeah? Well, you can tell Ny'alotha that Rick Sanchez doesn't serve anyone, especially not tentacle monsters from discount Lovecraft dimensions. The creature laughs, and the sound makes reality crack. You misunderstand. This is not a request. You were pulled here because your mind, your glorious, unshackled mind, is exactly what we need. The old gods have been imprisoned for eons, but you have knowledge that transcends this world's limitations. With your help, we will finally break free. Paladins charge the creature with weapons blazing holy light. The tentacles swat them aside like insects, their armor offering no protection against geometry that shouldn't exist. Mages unleash fire and frost, but the entity absorbs the magic, growing larger with each spell. Rick's scanner is screaming warnings, detecting energy signatures that match what corrupted his portal gun. This thing, this old god servant, it's the reason he's trapped here. It pulled him through the Twisting Nether deliberately, contaminating his equipment in the process. And now it wants to use him. Kalia, Rick says, his mind racing through calculations. This old god, how powerful is it? Ny'alotha is one of 4 ancient evils imprisoned beneath Azeroth by the Titans eons ago, Kalia responds, maintaining a shimmering barrier between them and the creature. If it breaks free, it could corrupt the entire world. Reality itself would bend to its will. Rick laughs. The sound manic and entirely inappropriate. An ancient evil imprisoned by even more ancient cosmic beings? A godlike entity that can warp reality? Oh man, this is so much worse than I thought. He looks at the portal gun in his hands, at the void corruption seeping through its systems. But it's also really, really stupid. What do you mean? Kalia demands. I mean this N'Zoth thing just made a critical error, Rick explains, a plan forming in his brilliant, alcohol-soaked brain. It pulled me here thinking my knowledge would help it escape. But what it doesn't realize is that I'm the multiverse's expert on breaking and entering, especially when it comes to getting into places I shouldn't be. He grins savagely. If there's one thing Rick Sanchez excels at, it's finding the back door to any prison in existence. The void creature lunges toward them, tentacles extending with impossible speed. Kalia's barrier shatters like glass, and Rick feels something trying to force its way into his mind. Whispers promising power, knowledge, freedom from moral constraints. But Rick's encountered telepaths across 1,000 dimensions. His consciousness is shielded behind layers of cynicism, trauma, and blood alcohol content that would kill a normal person. Get out of my head, Rick snarls, pressing a button on a device in his pocket. A neural feedback pulse erupts from his position, and the creature recoils, its psychic attack reversed back upon itself. I've had family members try to guilt-trip me. I've had cosmic entities try to tempt me. And you know what? They all learned the same lesson. Rick Sanchez's mind is his own. The thing writhes in pain, some of its tentacles dissolving into shadow. Impossible. Your mind should be easily corrupted. You are a scientist without morality, a genius without compassion. You are everything we seek. Yeah, I'm all those things, Rick admits, pulling components from his lab coat and starting to assemble something on the fly. But I'm also the guy who's seen behind the curtain in every dimension I visit. I know what gods really are. I know what power really costs. And I know what happens to pawns in other people's games. He connects 2 wires, and his makeshift device starts humming with energy. So here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna tell me exactly how to purge void corruption from interdimensional technology. Then you're gonna crawl back to whatever prison you escaped from. And if you're really nice about it, I won't figure out how to make your imprisonment permanent. The creature's laughter is like nails on cosmic chalkboard. You are one man with broken technology in a world you don't understand. The old gods are eternal. We have corrupted galaxies. What makes you think you can threaten us? Rick's device activates, creating a field of energy that his scanner identifies as the exact opposite frequency of void corruption. The creature screams as its tentacles begin dissolving wherever the field touches them. What makes me think I can threaten you? Let me tell you a little story about hubris and cosmic entities who underestimate Rick Sanchez. Around them, more void creatures are emerging from the stockades, spilling into the cathedral district like living nightmares. The city guard is being overwhelmed, paladins falling back step by step as their holy light proves insufficient against horrors from outside reality. Kalaya and the other mages are maintaining a perimeter, but Rick can see they're losing ground. "We need to evacuate!" Kalaya shouts over the chaos. "Fall back to the throne room. We can establish better defenses there." Rick watches the void creatures spreading through Stormwind, watches people dying despite their respawn mechanics, despite their game-like world's rules, and he makes a decision he's going to regret. No evacuation. I'm gonna do something really stupid instead. "What are you talking about?" Kalaya demands. Rick pulls out his corrupted portal gun, examining it with new purpose. This thing is contaminated with void energy, right? Energy from the same source as these tentacle nightmares, which means it's now attuned to this dimension's hell layer, this Twisting Nether place. And if N'Zoth pulled me here deliberately, that means there's a connection, a pathway, between where I was and where these old gods are imprisoned. Kalia's eyes widen in horror. "You're not seriously considering opening a portal to Ny'alotha, the sleeping city, N'Zoth's prison realm?" "Not just considering it," Rick says, already making modifications to the portal gun's targeting system. "Actively planning it. See, your old god buddy here thinks I'm gonna help it escape. But what I'm actually gonna do is use its own corruption against it. I'm gonna open a portal directly to its prison, dump all these void creatures back where they came from, and then seal the door behind them." "That's insane," Kalaya protests. "No mortal has ever accessed Ny'alotha and returned. The psychological corruption alone would destroy your mind." Rick laughs bitterly. "Honey, my mind was destroyed decades ago. Alcoholism, trauma, and genius made sure of that. A little cosmic horror isn't gonna make things worse." He finishes the modifications, and the portal gun hums with dark energy that makes the nearby paladins back away in fear. "Now, I'm gonna need you and your wizard buddies to create a containment field. Something that can hold whatever comes through the portal for about 30 seconds. "What comes through?" Kalaya asks, dreading the answer. "Well, if I'm opening a door to an old god's prison, odds are good that something other than me is gonna want to use it," Rick explains casually. like he's discussing the weather rather than potentially dooming a city. Could be more void creatures. Could be an avatar of N'Zoth itself. Could be something worse that even the old gods keep locked up. Who knows? That's what makes it exciting. Kalia stares at him like he's completely insane. Which is fair, because Rick's pretty sure he is. But she's also a pragmatist who can see the cathedral district falling around them. If this goes wrong, I'm teleporting you directly into the sun. If this goes wrong, we'll both be tentacle food, so the sun would be a mercy, Rick counters. He raises the corrupted portal gun, aims it at empty air above the cathedral plaza, and starts charging it with power drawn from the void creatures themselves. The irony is delicious, using their own energy to banish them. The portal opens, and it's nothing like Rick's normal clean green rifts in space-time. This one bleeds shadow and madness, a gaping wound in reality that shows a city that shouldn't exist. Ny'alotha stretches beyond the portal, impossible architecture that defies Euclidean geometry, towers that spiral into darkness, streets that loop back on themselves. And everywhere, eyes watching. The void creatures in Stormwind immediately stop their attack, drawn to the portal like moths to flame. They rush toward it, abandoning their prey, scrambling over each other to reach home. Rick watches them funnel through, hundreds of horrors returning to their prison. It's working, Kalia breathes, amazed. Then something massive stirs in Ny'alotha's depths, something that makes the void creatures look like bacteria in comparison, a presence so vast that Rick's scanner simply displays error across all readouts. And that presence takes notice of the open portal, of the world beyond, of Rick Sanchez holding the door open. "Close it!" Kalia screams. "Close the portal now!" "Can't," Rick says, struggling to maintain the portal's stability as something enormous moves toward it from the other side. "If I close it now, half these void things will still be here. We've got to let them all through." The presence in Ny'alotha speaks, and this time it's not a servant or avatar. This is N'Zoth itself, an old god addressing Rick directly. "Rick Sanchez, you have opened the way. You have done exactly as I desired. Now you will witness what happens when gods walk free." A tentacle the size of a skyscraper erupts through the portal, slamming into the cathedral district with force that levels buildings. People scatter, screaming, dying, respawning at graveyards only to run from the same nightmare. The tentacle is covered in eyes, each one reflecting a different version of Azeroth, a different timeline where N'Zoth has already won. Rick watches his plan spiral into catastrophe and does what he always does when things go wrong. He makes them worse on purpose. "Kalia, what's the most powerful thing you can summon? The biggest gun in your magical arsenal?" "We'd need the entire Council of Six working together to manifest anything strong enough to hurt an old god," Kalia shouts back. "And even then, we'd probably fail." Rick grins his most manic grin. "Perfect. Get them here. Tell them to prepare the biggest, flashiest spell they know. And make sure they can fire it on my signal." "You're insane." "Yeah, I get that a lot." Rick pulls out another device, this one cobbled together from parts that look like they were stolen from a dozen different dimensions. See, N'Zoth made a mistake. It thinks it's winning. It thinks it played me perfectly, getting me to open a portal so it could escape. But what it doesn't realize is that I've been dealing with manipulative cosmic entities since before this dimension probably existed. And I always have a contingency. More tentacles pour through the portal, each one a pillar of nightmares made flesh. The cathedral itself begins corrupting, stone turning to organic matter, statues weeping black tears. Priests try to channel the light, but it's being smothered by shadow that predates mortal concepts of good and evil. Rick activates his device, and suddenly the portal doesn't just lead to Ny'alotha. It leads everywhere and nowhere, a multi-dimensional junction point that connects to every reality Rick has ever visited. Energy from 1,000 dimensions begins flooding through, incompatible physics colliding with Azeroth's carefully designed rules. Ny'alotha roars in confusion as its prison suddenly becomes a doorway to infinity. "What have you done?" "What I do best," Rick shouts over the reality storm he's created. "I broke your toy. See, you can't just walk into one dimension when that dimension is suddenly connected to all dimensions. Your tentacles are currently existing in 17 different states of matter simultaneously. Your mind is processing contradictory universal constants, and in about 30 seconds, the whole thing is going to collapse in on itself in what I like to call an interdimensional implosion." The tentacles start warping, twisting, changing as different realities assert their physics over them. One becomes crystalline, frozen in a dimension where entropy works backward. Another ignites with nuclear fire from a universe where combustion has no limit. A third simply fades out of existence as probability itself decides it's too unlikely to continue. "Now!" Rick screams at Kalia. "Hit it with everything you've got!" The Council of Six appears in formation around the plaza. 6 archmages channeling power that makes the air itself scream. They weave their magic together, combining fire and frost and arcane into a lance of pure magical force. The spell punches through the reality storm, through N'Zoth's writhing form, and detonates inside Ny'alotha itself. The explosion is visible from orbit. The portal convulses, vomiting energy and tentacles and screaming void before collapsing in on itself with a sound like the universe filing a noise complaint. N'Zoth is yanked back into its prison, the seal reinforced not just by Titan magic, but by the fundamental incompatibility between its reality and the infinite realities Rick just exposed it to. Silence falls over Stormwind. The void corruption begins receding, buildings slowly returning to normal stone and mortar. Bodies of the fallen fade and respawn at nearby graveyards, their death temporary in this world, where game mechanics override mortality. Rick stands in the center of the devastated plaza, portal gun smoking in his hands, looking like he just went 12 rounds with reality itself. Kalia approaches cautiously. "What did you do? That wasn't just magic, that was something else entirely." "I introduced your old god to the concept of the multiverse," Rick explains, slumping against a broken pillar. "Beings like N'Zoth, they're big fish in a small pond. They're adapted to one reality, one set of rules. Expose them to infinite realities, and their power becomes meaningless. It's like trying to be a god in every language simultaneously. Eventually, the translation errors kill you." Around them, the city guard is regrouping. Mages are sealing residual void rifts, and citizens are slowly emerging from wherever they hid. The cathedral district is destroyed, but the city survived. More importantly, N'Zoth is back in its cage, and the cage is now reinforced with dimensional physics that no old god should be able to bypass. But Rick's not celebrating. He's examining his portal gun, watching the void corruption finally purging from its systems. The device is functional again, dimensional coordinates stabilizing, power systems coming back online. He could leave. Right now, he could open a portal and vanish from this bizarre dimension where nothing quite makes sense. A young paladin approaches, eyes wide with awe and fear in equal measure. "Sir, are you a god?" Are you one of the Titans returned to save us? Rick almost laughs, but settles for bitter smile. No, kid. I'm not a god. I'm just a scientist who's really, really good at breaking things, including godlike entities who think they're hot shit. He looks at Kalia. You're gonna have problems. And Zoth might be contained, but it's pissed off now. And I just taught it that the multiverse exists. Given enough time, it'll figure out how to use that knowledge. Kalia nods slowly. Then we'll be ready. Thanks to you, we know there's more out there than Azeroth. More than the great dark beyond. That knowledge alone is worth the price of today's destruction. Yeah. Well, knowledge has a way of destroying everything you thought you understood, Rick mutters, making final adjustments to his portal gun. Trust me on that. I've destroyed a lot of people's worldviews across a lot of dimensions. Before he can activate the portal gun, a new voice cuts through the plaza. Not so fast, traveler. Rick turns to see someone new arriving. Someone who makes even the archmages step back in deference. The man is young, handsome in that generic, heroic way, with golden armor and a crown that suggests royalty but it's his eyes that catch Rick's attention. They're tired, ancient despite the young face, like someone who's carried the weight of the world for too long. King Anduin Rin, Kalia says, bowing slightly. The situation is contained. Anduin surveys the destruction, his expression pained. At great cost. The cathedral district will take months to rebuild. Hundreds died, even if they've respawned. His gaze locks onto Rick. And you are the one who both caused and solved this crisis, I'm told. Rick shrugs. Mostly solved. I'd give myself a solid 70-30 on the whole cause versus solution ratio. I want to know everything, Anduin says, and there's steel beneath the diplomatic tone. What you are, where you're from, and whether your presence here represents a greater threat to Azeroth. Guards move to flank Rick, but they're tentative, clearly unsure if they could actually stop him if he decided to leave. Rick sizes up the young king, seeing both the idealism and the damage underneath. This is someone who's fought wars he didn't want to fight, made compromises he didn't want to make. Someone trying desperately to be a good king in a world that punishes goodness. It's almost enough to make Rick feel something approaching sympathy. Almost. Here's the short version, Your Majesty, Rick says, voice dripping with sarcasm. I'm from outside your reality. My technology accidentally brushed up against your hell dimension, got corrupted, crashed me here. An old god decided to use me as an unwitting pawn to escape its prison. I figured out what was happening, improvised a solution, and now I'm leaving before your world finds new and exciting ways to screw me over. He raises the portal gun. Thanks for the interdimensional nightmare fuel. I'll be sure not to recommend this dimension on Yelp. Wait, Anduin commands, and something in his voice makes Rick pause. Not magic, not compulsion, just genuine desperation. If what you say is true, if there are infinite realities beyond our own, then you have knowledge that could change everything. The faction war between Alliance and Horde, the constant threat of cosmic forces, all of it might be solvable if we understood the greater multiverse. Rick laughs, the sound harsh and mocking. Oh, you sweet summer child. You think knowing about the multiverse would solve your problems? Let me tell you what happens when civilizations discover they're not alone in the cosmic scheme. First comes existential crisis. Then comes the desperate attempts to travel between dimensions. Then comes the part where you accidentally unleash something that makes your old gods look like cranky toddlers. He gestures around at the still smoking crater of the cathedral district. You barely handled one contaminated scientist with a broken portal gun. You're not ready for what's out there. Kalia steps forward, her diplomatic training kicking in. Then help us prepare. Stay, at least for a while. Share your knowledge in exchange for our assistance in fully purging your device of void corruption. Rick checks his scanner. The portal gun registers clean, but Kalia's right. There are still trace amounts of N'Zoth's influence buried in the quantum matrices. Nothing that would prevent travel, but enough that repeated jumps might re-corrupt the system. God damn it, he mutters. Fine. I'll stick around long enough to do a complete purge. But I'm not your consultant, I'm not your advisor, and I'm definitely not getting involved in whatever faction drama you people have going on. Anduin nods, clearly pleased despite Rick's hostile tone. We'll provide whatever resources you need. Kalia, take our guest to the Mage Quarter. Give him access to the Arcane Sanctum. He turns back to Rick. I only ask one thing in return, beyond your technological maintenance. Tonight, dine with me and my advisors. Let us understand each other before you leave our world. Rick wants to refuse, wants to tell this idealistic king exactly where he can shove his diplomatic dinner. But he's also pragmatic enough to recognize when cooperation serves his interests. One dinner. No speeches about unity and hope. No trying to recruit me for whatever war you've got brewing. Just food, information exchange, and then I'm gone. Agreed, Anduin says, extending a hand. Rick stares at the offered handshake like it's a tentacle in disguise before reluctantly accepting. The king's grip is firm, strengthened by years of wielding weapons too heavy for someone his age. They shake, and Rick can't help but notice that Anduin's hand trembles slightly. Not from weakness, but from the weight of responsibility grinding down on him. As Kalia leads Rick away toward the Mage Quarter, Anduin watches them go with an expression the scientist can't quite read. It's not suspicion, exactly. More like recognition. Like the king sees something familiar in Rick's cynicism and exhaustion. The Mage Quarter is everything Rick expected. Towers covered in glowing runes, arcane energy so thick you could cut it with a knife, and wizards everywhere practicing spells with the casual confidence of people who've never accidentally turned themselves inside out. Kalia guides him to a private sanctum, a workshop filled with magical implements and alchemical apparatus. This is our most advanced facility, Kalia explains. We have power sources drawn from ley lines, crystallized arcane energy, and even a fragment of a Ny'alotha if you need light-based power. Rick immediately starts examining the equipment with professional interest. Not bad for a civilization that treats science like religion, although calling this advanced is like calling a stone wheel cutting edge because it's round. He spots something on a workbench that makes him pause. Wait, is that a soul gem? Are you people actually trapping souls in crystals? Kalia looks uncomfortable. Soul shards are a standard resource for warlocks. It's necessary for certain spells. It's horrific is what it is, Rick snaps, his mind already cataloging the ethical nightmares implied by casual soul-trapping technology. You've got wizards running around with portable afterlife violations in their pockets? What kind of dimension is this? One that does what's necessary to survive, Kalia replies defensively. We've faced the Burning Legion, the Scourge, the Old Gods, threats that would destroy softer civilizations. Sometimes survival requires difficult choices. Rick snorts. Yeah, I've heard that justification before. Usually right before someone's about to do something monstrous and wants to feel better about it. He pulls out his portal gun and starts disassembling it on the workbench. But hey, who am I to judge? I've made plenty of difficult choices myself. Most of them involved running away really fast. As Rick works, Kalia watches with fascination. The portal gun's internals are like nothing in Azeroth's magical tradition. Instead of focusing crystals and mana channels, There are components that seem to exist in multiple states simultaneously, circuits that loop through dimensions she can't even perceive. Rick handles them with casual expertise, explaining nothing while muttering calculations under his breath. "Your technology," Kalia says finally. "It doesn't use mana or any energy source I recognize. How does it work?" Rick doesn't look up from his repairs. Quantum field manipulation, dimensional folding, and a lot of math that would make your brain leak out your ears. The basic principle is that space-time is more flexible than most dimensions realize. You just need to know where to push and how hard. But there's no ritual, no spell components, no connection to cosmic forces, Kalia presses. How do you achieve these effects without drawing on the fundamental powers of reality? Rick finally looks at her, and there's something approaching respect in his eyes. "That's actually a smart question. Most wizards in most dimensions never think to ask it. They just assume magic is magic, and that's that." He gestures at his partially disassembled portal gun. "The secret is that there is no secret. Your cosmic forces, your light and shadow and arcane and whatever else you've got, they're not fundamental. They're just different flavors of the same underlying physics. I've been to dimensions where what you call shadow magic is standard thermodynamics, where holy light is just organized photonic energy with a positive emotional resonance." Kalia shakes her head. "That's impossible. The cosmic forces are the building blocks of reality. The Titans themselves are manifestations of order, while the Void Lords represent shadow. They've existed since before mortal civilizations. And I'm sure they'd love for you to keep believing that," Rick says, returning to his work. "Keeps you dependent, keeps you worshipping, keeps you from realizing that you could probably replicate most of their divine powers with sufficient technological advancement." He pulls out a component covered in void corruption and holds it up to the light. "Case in point, your old gods. Terrifying, reality-warping, sanity-destroying nightmares, right? But strip away the horror show aesthetics, and what do you have? Telepathic organisms that manipulate dimensional boundaries and biological systems. Powerful, sure, but not gods. Just very old, very evolved beings that learned how to hack your universe's code." "That's heresy," Kalia whispers, but there's doubt in her voice. "Heresy's just science that makes religious people uncomfortable," Rick counters. He starts reassembling the portal gun with steady hands, despite the flask he keeps sipping from. "Look, I'm not saying your cosmic forces aren't real or powerful. I'm saying they're not special. Every dimension has its own version of them, its own wannabe gods and reality-bending entities. And in every dimension, I've found that understanding beats worship, knowledge beats faith, and good old-fashioned spite beats inevitable cosmic doom." A chime sounds from somewhere in the tower, and Kalia straightens. "That's the dinner summons. The king is ready to receive us." Rick groans. "Can't I just finish fixing my gun and skip the whole diplomatic theater?" "You agreed to one dinner," Kalia reminds him. "Besides, you might find it interesting. Anduin has gathered some of our world's most exceptional minds and leaders." "Oh great, more exceptional people. Just what I needed." Rick stores his partially repaired portal gun back in his lab coat and follows Kalia out of the sanctum. "If anyone tries to make a toast, I'm leaving." Stormwind Keep's throne room has been converted into a dining hall, with a long table laden with food that makes Rick's stomach growl despite his cynicism. Roasted meats that smell like they come from animals that never existed on Earth, fruits with colors he's never seen in nature, and flagons of what his scanner identifies as magically enhanced alcohol. Around the table sit the most powerful figures in the Alliance, and Rick recognizes the pattern immediately. This isn't just a dinner, it's a recruitment attempt. Anduin sits at the head of the table, with a space of honor saved for Rick on his right. Around them are a dwarf, whose beard contains what appear to be living glyphs, a night elf woman whose eyes glow with silver moonlight, a Draenei male whose crystalline horns pulse with sacred energy, and several humans in various military and magical regalia. They all stare at Rick with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. "Welcome," Anduin says, gesturing to the empty seat. "Please join us. I've taken the liberty of inviting our most trusted advisors, so we might all benefit from your unique perspective." Rick slouches into the chair, immediately grabbing a flagon and taking a long drink. The alcohol is strong enough to burn, which is the only good thing that's happened to him all day. "Let me guess. You want to know about the multiverse, about dimensional travel, about whether there are other versions of your world out there where maybe things went better." The Night Elf woman, who Kalia quietly identifies as High Priestess Tyrande Whisperwind, leans forward with piercing intensity. "We want to know if your technology could be used to access those other timelines, to perhaps find versions of Azeroth where the wars never happened, where our loved ones never died." Rick's expression darkens. "First rule of multiverse travel: never, ever try to replace your dead with alternate versions. It ends badly every single time. Second rule: even if you found a better Azeroth, you can't bring that back here. You can't merge timelines or transfer resources between them without catastrophic consequences. And third rule, most important one: other versions of you are not you. They made different choices, faced different challenges. Meeting them usually just results in existential crisis and occasionally murder." "Spoken from experience?" the dwarf Muradin Bronzebeard asks gruffly. "I've met more alternate versions of myself than you've had hot dinners," Rick replies. "Some were better people than me. Most were worse. None of them were worth the trip." He takes another drink, trying to wash away memories of the citadel of Ricks and all the mistakes his alternate selves represent. Anduin cuts a piece of meat with deliberate care. "Then perhaps dimensional travel isn't the answer. But your technology clearly demonstrates that reality is more malleable than we believed. Could your knowledge be applied to other problems? The faction war, for instance. Alliance and Horde have been killing each other for generations. Surely an outside perspective might offer solutions we've overlooked." Rick actually laughs, drawing startled looks from around the table. "Oh man, you really don't know what you're asking. You want me to solve your eternal war problem? Fine. Here's the solution. Realize that whoever designed this world wanted eternal conflict. They built it into the system. Alliance versus Horde, light versus shadow, order versus chaos. Everything here is structured around perpetual opposition. You're not fighting because of ideology or resources. You're fighting because the fundamental rules of your reality demand conflict." The table falls silent. Several advisors exchange uncomfortable glances. "What are you saying?" Tyrande demands. Rick leans back, his eyes cold and analytical. "I'm saying that your world isn't natural. It's designed, crafted. Someone or something built Azeroth with specific rules, specific conflicts, specific outcomes in mind. The respawning, the faction system, the way magic works like it's following a handbook, even the way powerful artifacts conveniently appear when the story needs them. This isn't a universe, it's a construct, and you're all living inside it without questioning why." Muradin slams his fist on the table. "That's madness. Azeroth was forged by the Titans, shaped by the elements, inhabited by countless species across millions of years." "And who told you that?" Rick counters. "Let me guess. Ancient texts? Titan recordings? Visions from cosmic entities who definitely wouldn't have any reason to lie about the nature of reality. He pulls out his scanner and displays holographic data across the table. I've been taking readings since I arrived. Your planet has a heartbeat, like a literal pulse of organized energy emanating from somewhere beneath the surface. Your continents reformed after the cataclysm in ways that violate geological principles. And everyone here, every single inhabitant of Azeroth, has what I can only describe as quest markers in their personal probability fields. Quest markers? Kalia asks, confused. Indicators of significance, narrative weight, destiny if you want to get poetic about it, Rick explains. Every person in this dimension has a role, a purpose, a place in some grand story. That's not how reality works in natural universes. In real reality, most people are extras, background noise. But here, even the lowliest farmer has narrative potential. It's like someone's running a campaign and everyone's a playable character. Anduin's face has gone pale. If what you're saying is true, if Azeroth is designed, then what about free will? Are our choices our own, or are we following some script? Rick shrugs. Probably both. The script provides framework, but you're still making choices within that framework. Think of it like this. Someone built the game board, placed the pieces, wrote the general rules. But how you play, that's still up to you. Your pain is real, your relationships are real, your consciousness is absolutely real. You're just real within a very specific, very controlled environment. The Draenei man, Prophet Velen, according to Kalia's whispered introduction, speaks for the first time. His voice carries the weight of millennia. The light has shown me visions of possible futures, many paths branching from each decision. Are you suggesting these visions are not glimpses of destiny, but rather options in this game you describe? Bingo, Rick confirms. Multiple possible outcomes based on player choice. Classic game design. Keeps things interesting while maintaining the illusion of free will. He pauses, studying Velen more closely. You're old, aren't you? Like, really old. 25,000 years, according to what I'm picking up. Have you never questioned why you and others like you live so long when it violates every principle of cellular biology? Velen's luminous eyes narrow. The light sustains us. It is both gift and burden. The light is a game mechanic, Rick states flatly. Probably tied to your race's playable characteristics. Extended lifespan, natural connection to holy magic, enhanced regeneration. These aren't divine blessings. They're racial traits balanced against drawbacks to maintain gameplay equilibrium. Around the table, faces range from thoughtful to outraged. Tyrande looks like she wants to leap across and strangle Rick. Muradin appears to be reconsidering every life choice that led to this conversation. Anduin just looks tired, like this is one more burden added to an already crushing weight. Why are you telling us this? Anduin asks quietly. What purpose does it serve to destroy our understanding of reality? Rick takes a long drink before answering. Because I've seen too many civilizations collapse when they discover the truth unprepared. Better to hear it now from someone who doesn't give a shit about protecting your feelings than to stumble into it during some cosmic crisis. He leans forward, and for the first time, there's something almost like concern in his eyes. Look, your world is facing real threats. Old gods, burning legion remnants, whatever else is lurking out there. You need every advantage to survive. And the biggest advantage is understanding the system you're operating in. If you know the rules, you can find the exploits. Exploits? Kalia asks. Glitches, loopholes, unintended interactions between systems, Rick clarifies. Every designed reality has them. In your case, it's probably things like resurrection mechanics, faction reputation systems, the way powerful artifacts bind to specific individuals. If you understand these mechanics, You can use them strategically, rather than just accepting them as mysterious divine will. Velen strokes his beard thoughtfully. You speak of manipulating the fundamental forces of our world, using sacred mysteries as tools rather than gifts. This borders on blasphemy against the light itself. The light isn't a person, it's a power source, Rick shoots back. Probably quantum-entangled consciousness energy organized into a positive feedback loop. Using it strategically isn't blasphemy, it's efficiency. He pulls out a device and tosses it to Velen. Here, scan yourself. You'll see that your connection to the light is actually a measurable frequency in your neural pathways. It can be enhanced, dampened, or even transferred with the right technology. Velen catches the device but doesn't use it, staring at it like it might bite. And if we follow your path? If we treat sacred powers as mere mechanisms, what becomes of us? You might actually win your wars instead of perpetuating them, Rick says bluntly. You might advance beyond the endless cycle of threat and response that defines this world. You might even figure out who or what designed Azeroth and why. He pauses. Or you might discover something so horrible that you wish you'd stayed ignorant. It's a coin flip, really. The dinner continues in uncomfortable silence as people process Rick's revelations. Food is consumed mechanically. Alcohol flows freely, and Rick can see the cracks forming in belief systems that have sustained these leaders through countless trials. Finally, Anduin speaks again. Even if everything you say is true, even if we are living in a designed reality, we still have responsibilities. People depend on us. Civilizations need guidance. Whether our world is natural or constructed, the suffering is real. Fair point, Rick acknowledges. I've seen plenty of people in artificial realities who matter just as much as anyone in natural ones. Consciousness is consciousness, regardless of origin. He finishes his drink. Which brings me to my real warning. If Azeroth is designed, then someone designed it. And if Ny'alotha is starting to understand the multiverse exists, it's only a matter of time before whatever created this dimension notices the leak. What would happen then? Muradin asks, his earlier hostility replaced with genuine concern. Rick's expression grows grim. Depends on the creator. Best case scenario, they patch the hole I created, maybe reboot some systems. Everyone respawns with slightly adjusted memories. Worst case scenario, they decide this reality instance has been compromised and needs to be deleted entirely. The room erupts in protests and questions, but Anduin raises a hand for silence. Is there anything we can do to prevent either scenario? Rick considers the question seriously. Maybe. If I can finish purging the void corruption from my portal gun, I can seal the dimensional breach more permanently. But that's just a band-aid. The real problem is that your reality now has a confirmed connection point to the multiverse. That's like hanging a welcome sign for every cosmic entity looking for new dimensions to exploit. He pulls out his portal gun, examining its partially restored systems. I need about 6 more hours to complete the purge. During that time, I'd suggest gathering your best minds, your most powerful magic users. If something comes through before I'm done, you'll need every defense you can muster. Tyrande stands abruptly. I will alert the Temple of the Moon. If darker forces approach, we will be ready. Muradin follows suit. The Bronzebeard clan will mobilize. Whatever comes, it'll face dwarven steel. One by one, the advisors excuse themselves, rushing off to prepare for a threat they barely understand. Soon only Anduin, Kalia, and Rick remain at the table. You've terrified them, Anduin observes. Stripped away comfort and certainty in exchange for harsh truths. Yeah, I'm great at parties, Rick mutters. He studies the young king. You don't look surprised, though, or terrified. You look like someone who already suspected the truth. Anduin smiles sadly. When you've seen as much death and resurrection as I have, when you've watched friends return from oblivion multiple times, you start to question. Why do some people matter more than others? Why do heroes always arrive just in time? Why does fate consistently provide exactly the challenges we're capable of overcoming? He pours himself more wine. I've carried these doubts for years, but voicing them felt like betraying everyone who believed. Rick actually feels something approaching sympathy for this kid playing king in a rigged game. For what it's worth, you're handling it better than most. I've seen entire civilizations collapse when they realized they weren't as special as they thought. We'll endure, Anduin says with quiet confidence. We always do. It's probably written into the code. Rick laughs despite himself. Dark humor. Didn't expect that from a paladin king. I contain multitudes, Anduin replies with a slight smile. Then the smile fades. Can I ask you something? In all your travels across the multiverse, have you ever found a dimension where people are truly free? Where there's no design, no cosmic plan, just pure chaotic existence? Rick thinks about Earth C-137, about his own original dimension with all its arbitrary suffering and random cruelty. Yeah, they're usually the worst ones. At least designed realities have structure, meaning, patterns you can predict. Natural chaos is just chaos. No purpose, no plan, just an indifferent universe slowly increasing entropy until everything dies cold and alone. He takes a drink. So maybe you're lucky. Someone cared enough about your world to design it, to give it rules and meaning. Even if that meaning is kill each other stylishly for eternity, at least it's something. That's bleak comfort, Anduin observes. It's the only kind I've got, Rick admits. They sit in silence for a moment, two beings from different realities sharing the weight of uncomfortable truths. Then alarms begin blaring throughout Stormwind Keep, and Rick's scanner lights up with warnings. What now? Anduin demands, immediately standing. Rick checks his readings and swears. Remember how I said it would take 6 hours to seal the breach properly? Well, something just figured out there's an opening and is trying to force its way through early. He bolts for the door, Anduin and Kalia right behind him. We need to get to the mage quarter now! They sprint through the keep, guards and citizens scattering as the king and his companions race past. Outside, the sky above Stormwind has turned wrong, like reality is showing its seams. Cracks of impossible color spread across the heavens, and through them, something immense is trying to push through. In the mage quarter, Rick's portal gun lies on the workbench where he left it, pulsing with unstable energy. The void corruption he was purging has become active, resonating with whatever's trying to breach the dimension. Around the sanctum, mages are desperately casting wards, but Rick can see they're insufficient against whatever's coming. I need everyone out, Rick shouts, grabbing his portal gun. Now! What's happening? Kalia demands, even as she begins evacuating the tower. Ny'alotha is smarter than I gave it credit for, Rick admits, working frantically on the portal gun. It realized that if it couldn't escape through my dimensional breach, it could use the breach to call something else. Something from outside Azeroth entirely. He points at the sky where reality continues cracking. That's not an old god breaking free. That's something from another dimension answering Ny'alotha's call for help. Anduin's eyes widen. What could be worse than an old god? Rick's response is drowned out by the sound of reality breaking. The cracks in the sky shatter completely, and something emerges that makes everyone who sees it immediately wish they hadn't. It's vaguely humanoid, but exists in too many dimensions simultaneously. Parts of it visible, parts of it creating blind spots in perception where minds simply refuse to process what they're seeing. Where it passes, the carefully designed reality of Azeroth glitches, textures loading incorrectly, physics stuttering like a corrupted program. "That's a Dimensional Auditor," Rick says, his voice tight with genuine fear for the first time since arriving in Azeroth. Entities that travel the multiverse looking for damaged or compromised realities. When they find one, they either fix it or delete it depending on the severity of the breach. "Can we fight it?" Anduin asks, already reaching for his sword. "Can you fight the concept of quality control?" Rick counters. "These things exist outside conventional reality. They're not evil. They're not good. They just enforce structural integrity across the multiverse." He makes desperate adjustments to his portal gun. "Our only chance is to convince it that Azeroth can be repaired, rather than deleted." The Auditor descends toward Stormwind, and reality buckles under its presence. Buildings flicker between different states of existence. People phase in and out of visibility. The carefully maintained separation between life and death starts breaking down as respawn mechanics become visible. Souls streaming from graveyards back into bodies in glowing threads that were never meant to be seen. "It's going to examine the breach I created," Rick realizes. "Once it sees how badly I contaminated your reality with multiversal connections, it'll initiate deletion protocols." He looks at Anduin with uncharacteristic seriousness. "I need to talk to it, and I need every priest, paladin, and mage in this city to channel the most powerful defensive spell they can manage. If this goes wrong, that barrier might buy you a few extra minutes to make peace with whatever gods you haven't lost faith in." Anduin doesn't hesitate. He activates a magical comm system and begins issuing orders across the city. Within minutes, Stormwind's defensive forces are gathering, combining light and arcane into a massive shield around the entire city. Rick steps out of the Mage Quarter Tower, portal gun in one hand, flask in the other, looking up at the impossible entity descending toward him. "Hey! Yeah, you, cosmic bureaucrat! I'm the idiot who caused the breach. You want to delete something? Delete me and leave the dimension alone." The Auditor doesn't speak in any conventional sense. Information simply appears in Rick's mind, bypassing language entirely. Reality instance. Designation unknown. Structural integrity. Compromised. Multiversal contamination. Severe. Initiating assessment protocols. "Yeah, I know it looks bad," Rick argues with a being he can barely perceive. "But this reality is salvageable. The inhabitants are sentient, functional, capable of maintaining local stability. The breach was accidental and is already being sealed." He holds up his portal gun. "Give me 60 more minutes, and I can close the dimensional connection permanently." Accidental breach indicates fundamental instability. Designed realities should not interface with multiverse. Quarantine has been violated. The Auditor begins cycling through what Rick recognizes as deletion protocols, reality around them starting to simplify, reduce, prepare for complete erasure. "Wait!" Rick shouts, his mind racing. "You're right. This is a designed reality. But that means someone authorized its creation. Someone with multiversal authority signed off on Azeroth existing as a closed system. If you delete it without checking for proper authorization, you might be destroying someone else's project." The Auditor pauses. Creator identification required. Rick has no idea who created Azeroth, but he's learned over countless adventures that when you don't know the answer, you stall. Creator identification is, encoded in the planetary core, the world's soul. Yeah, that makes sense. You'd need to fully assess the world's soul before deletion to ensure you're not violating larger protocols. The Auditor's attention shifts, scanning deeper into Azeroth's structure. Rick can sense its focus drilling down through layers of reality toward the sleeping titan at the planet's core. While it's distracted, Rick works frantically on his portal gun, purging the last traces of void corruption while simultaneously creating a complex multiversal equation. "Kalia," Rick hisses to the Archmage beside him. "I need you to channel every bit of arcane energy you can into my portal gun when I give the signal." "What are you planning?" she asks. "Something incredibly stupid that'll either save your world or destroy it slightly faster than the Auditor would," Rick admits. "But I'm all out of smart options." The Auditor completes its scan of the world soul. Creator signature detected. Reality instance authorized by unknown entity. However, multiversal contamination remains critical threat. "Then let me remove the contamination," Rick argues. "The only multiversal elements in this dimension are the traces I accidentally left behind and the connection N'Zoth established through my portal. I can sever both, close all the dimensional weak points, restore Azeroth to its pre-breach state." Probability of successful decontamination, 34%. Probability of further compromise, 66%. Deletion remains optimal solution. Reality begins breaking down in earnest. The sky fractures into geometric patterns. The ground becomes transparent, revealing the code-like structures beneath physical matter. People scream as their bodies start rendering incorrectly, textures failing, existence stuttering. "Now!" Rick screams to Kalia. The Archmage and dozens of others channel every ounce of magical energy they possess into Rick's portal gun. The device overloads with power, dimensional technology mixing with arcane force in ways that should be impossible. Rick points it at the Auditor and fires. What emerges isn't a portal. It's an equation, a mathematical proof written in pure energy that propagates through multiple dimensions simultaneously. Rick is essentially arguing with the Auditor in its own language, presenting a logical case for Azeroth's preservation through pure dimensional mathematics. The equation states, this reality has value. Its inhabitants possess genuine consciousness. Its narrative structure provides purpose and meaning. The contamination is minimal and containable. Deletion would destroy something of worth. Preservation serves greater multiversal diversity. The Auditor processes the equation. For a moment, that feels like an eternity. The fate of Azeroth hangs in balance. Then reality stops breaking down. The cracks in the sky begin healing. The glitches in physical matter resolve themselves. Equation accepted. Reality instance will be preserved under probationary status. Dimensional breach must be sealed within designated time frame. 47 minutes, 13 seconds. Failure will result in automatic deletion. The Auditor vanishes, returning to whatever space between spaces it came from. Rick collapses to his knees, the portal gun smoking in his hands, mind reeling from directly interfacing with a multiversal enforcement entity. Anduin rushes to his side. "Did you just negotiate with that thing?" "I mathed it into submission," Rick gasps. Turns out cosmic bureaucrats respond well to logical arguments presented in their native language. He struggles to his feet, still dizzy. "But we've got less than 47 minutes to seal every dimensional weak point in Azeroth, or everything I just did was pointless." Kalia helps support him. "How do we do that?" Rick pulls himself together through sheer stubbornness and probably alcohol. I need to amplify my portal gun's signal using every magical power source in this city. The plan is to create a dimensional ward around the entire planet, essentially a firewall that prevents any future breaches. He looks at Anduin. But I'm going to need your help, and the help of every faction leader who can channel cosmic energy. And deep beneath the world, in a prison that now feels smaller than ever before, N'Zoth plots and plans, knowing that one day, somehow, it will find a way to breach the barrier that old man installed. The old god has patience measured in eons. It can wait. But Rick Sanchez, wherever he is in the infinite multiverse, isn't waiting for anything. He's too busy surviving, too busy running, too busy being the smartest man in universes that wish he'd never arrived. And that's exactly how he likes it.